So, in honor of Friday the 13th, let's kill this shit. I'm Aaron. I'm the Tommy Jarvis of the podcast.
And I'm Josh, the Shelley of the podcast, the mask giver.
Welcome to episode 7. Very special Friday the 13th edition. So, you're not going to hear us two losers talk too much, as we had a very special guest, Adrienne King. So, we did a interview with her. She was gracious enough to grant us her time. And we got some pretty good info for you guys. So, a lot of stuff I haven't heard before. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and if this guy hasn't heard it, nobody's heard it. I love Friday the 13th, and this guy loves it even more. Like, take it times 100 over me. Great experience talking to Adrienne, and you know, the information that she shared with us was phenomenal.
Yeah, so she's going to be at Chiller Theater if you'd like to meet her in person. It's April 27th through 29th in Parsippany, New Jersey, so it's coming up. Again, she's doing the Boy Scout camp on Friday, April 13th at the original campsite, so she's going back. She discusses that in the interview. She gives a lot of tidbits about how the movie was made, a lot of special stuff with Betsy Palmer, who of course is Mrs. Voorhees in the movie. So a lot of special one-on-one interaction with her. And again, with her website, Crystal Lake Wines or adrienneking.com. Please order your bottle. It's a very good wine. Again, she'll autograph the bottles for you. It's a cool collectible. And don't forget that she has 8x10s, posters, all kinds of stuff that you can get signed. So,
And it was a really great conversation with her. She got personal about her own life. She got personal about what happened filming, you know, like what the crew went through and how hard it was, you know, physically, which kind of I didn't know, you know, that it was a pretty grueling physical filming and maybe not as much stunt acting as you would think, which I found very interesting.
so without further ado, let's give it up to the final girl. Here's Adrienne. All right, so obviously you're going back to the lake in a couple weeks. So how excited are
less
you?
than a couple. I'm flying in on the 12th.
I mean, I guess, did you expect to be going back like 40 years later here?
Never. No, this is the most remarkable full circle I've ever been on, you know. When I left that place 38 or whatever years ago, hobbling, I never thought I'd be returning, that's for sure, but it's going to be so cool, especially with all the happy campers and some new counselors showing up at camp for the tours, the Boy Scout tours. I'm really excited about it.
So how did you get involved with it? Did they contact you or?
Well, you know, they didn't contact me directly. I have a new manager, I should say, Stacy Lee and Chris Carbell, and that's CMV Promotions, I believe is their official name. But the V stands for Voorhees. So, you know, they're true Friday the 13th fans as well as management. And I actually met the two of them at my first convention back in 2004 when Chiller invited me, and I was there with a couple of other people, including Betsy Palmer. None of us knew what we were getting into and showed up without 8x10s or anything, and they had to go running to Kinko. So this is such a blast from the past. I can't even begin to tell you.
From a teenage perspective, basically, to go back and look at it now, it's got to be a pretty unique experience. Like,
huge. I mean, you know, it's like, I don't know if you've ever gone back to the first home you ever grew up in, and when you went back there, it was tiny, and it was so huge when you grew up in it. It's like, I don't know what to expect, except a lot of memories coming by. But no, the last time I saw that camp, you know, it was right after we got the the take that made the Friday the 13th what it is today, and the reason I'm still going back there, and we're still talking about Friday the 13th, that iconic shot, last scene with little boy Jason popping out of the lake. That was the last time we did that to get it right. We had 3 cameras going, and everybody was just keeping their fingers crossed and praying, because if we didn't get it this time, it was the middle of October. I don't know if we could have saved enough money to do it again, to tell you the truth. So, when I walked off that, I was hobbling, and it was, you know what I mean? It was just the end of wow. So to go back there 38 and a half years later, God, I just don't, does anyone get to do anything that incredible? I don't know. This is going to be a mind blower for me, and so many of the other people that I've been contacted by who were lucky enough to get chosen from the lottery or bid enough, whatever, you know, for the Boy Scout camp. They've just been letting me know that they're beside themselves, and it's like a dream come true. So it's going to be monumental for everyone involved, I think.
No, it sounds like a great experience, you know, especially for the fans to be able to, you know, experience it with you, you know. And,
yeah. And I just remembered Stacy. I was talking about Stacy, and I met her at the Chiller in 2004, and she was the one that developed a relationship with the guy who's heading up the Boy Scouts. I guess the camp itself or the Boy Scouts. I haven't spoken to him or been in contact with him at all, but she has, and she was able to, after a couple of years of just getting, you know, developing a relationship, because I think that was in the works for a long time. But I found out Valentine's Day, Stacy emailed me and said, well, I think we've worked it out. They'd love to invite you back to camp. And I went, oh, my God. And then she said, how would you like to actually stay overnight? And that is something I could not turn down, because I never stayed at the camp at night when we were filming. The crew kind of did that. We got one step above the bunks, and we stayed at the hotel motel down the road a bit. But I'll actually be sleeping overnight Thursday night, Friday night, because the first group shows up 9 a.m. on Friday morning, on Friday the 13th. And my last memory of being there in the morning was sitting on the warming tray in the kitchen, and that fateful morning when we were able to finally nab that shot. But it was before the sun rose, and everybody, the crew and Ari and Tom Savini and Sean, they were already out there in the water setting up the shot, and I was sitting on the warming tray listening to the radio, and I swear it was something like along the lines of, hello, Blairstown, it's 38 degrees outside, and I'm going, ay. And that's how I remember my last morning there. So hopefully this won't be that. I'm hoping April's going to be a lot warmer than the middle of October.
Oh, it hasn't been too warm here, but it's supposed to warm up for that. So.
Oh, I am surely keeping my fingers crossed for that. But I don't think there's going to be any actual pulling into the lake.
I hope not.
At least I'm not planning on it. Let's put it that way. You know, I don't know what to expect, but hopefully nothing along those lines. Because we still don't have a wetsuit for Alice, so forget about that. But it's going to be amazing.
So I always wanted to know, being on with the Ari scene, was that always planned in the script, or was that like an afterthought to have Jason as a big surprise?
It was not in the original script. I have my original script still to this very day, and anybody, by the way, this allows me to say anybody who sees it on an eBay type of situation, I see that someone showed me in the UK, they somebody I don't know. They said it's my script. I have my script, so don't pay anything. They're asking for some ridiculous amount of money in the thousands, and I assure you, I have my own script, and Ari was not in it. I mean, little Jason popping up was not in it, and it came, it sort of came around after I guess they realized they needed another scare, another, and many tales. Some people say Sean thought it. Some people talk about Tom Savini came up with it. Then there's others that allude to Wes Craven speaking to Sean, or Sean asking Wes, and Wes putting in. But the fact of the matter is, we'll never know. I don't know who actually came up with it, because I wasn't there when it happened, and I didn't come up with it. So, it truly did make all the difference in the world. I can't imagine ending it any other way.
So what would it actually take for you to take a trip back out onto that lake? Like, would you ever take a canoe trip back out, like in warmer weather at least?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I love canoeing. I mean, I have my own canoe. I live in the boonies of Southern Oregon wine country. I live on a mile of river, and I have a lake not that far away from me. And but no, as far as I love to swim, and I usually, if I'm in a canoe, I'll try and tip somebody else over in a canoe. It's more fun that way. But the water should be warm, or at least summertime with cool, warm water. I just, it was, you can tell in that last scene, the leaves are turning color, Oh, and that's Angie. Anybody in your audience who follows me on Facebook, they all know Angie. Okay, Angie, enough. She keeps me safe from any Jasons in the world.
Very nice. So I gotta ask, how was it working with Betsy? I've got a chance to meet her a couple times. I actually volunteered for her line at a Monster Mania convention.
Oh, wow, that must have been a big line.
I just have to say, like, after an hour of working her line, I felt like it was working for my own grandma. Like, she is the nicest, sweetest lady, made me feel so comfortable. She's so, like, outgoing. Just like, she was so fantastic. So I just curious how it was working with her. Being that she was like the villain of the movie, was she kind of like on her own, or was she with the cast?
No, actually, I never found out how wonderful Betsy was till we were reunited in 2004 at the Chiller convention I was telling you about. And after that, we developed a relationship very akin to a mother-daughter. She was amazing, and I miss her desperately at the shows. And, oh, my God, would she love coming back to the camp? Oh, wow. I think she'd really enjoy it. But on the set, Sean was very just aware of the fact that we probably would get along. And not that he didn't trust his actors, because he totally did. But I think he felt it was probably a smarter choice to keep us apart. And being that most of her scenes were done either by herself or with me, because the kills were generally done by either Tom or Tom Savini, or his assistant Tasso, and so our scenes and our rehearsals, Sean gave us a lot of time together. We had 10 solid days, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in the world of low budget, it was a lot to get all of our stuff done. And she was incredible. I often compare it to playing tennis. I was a well-trained actress back then. I'd been acting since I was a kid and studied with the best of teachers, and just really knew my craft. And when I was working with her, I felt like she brought me up into a total different level. Like if you play tennis with someone who's so much better with you, you get better. You know how that is. Or you play any with someone else, it brings your game up. And I just appreciate her so much, because I feel that our performances and all the people, every single performance in that movie could not be duplicated. I just couldn't imagine anyone else doing Mrs. Voorhees. And God rest her soul. I mean, she just went through so much hell after that, too, with the critics, and they gave her such a hard time. But she did her, I mean, when you think about how that movie holds up, it's because of her. You believe none of this movie would have made sense if you didn't believe that this woman actually loved her son so much that she went insane. It's truly, she makes that believable, which is a hard thing to do. And in rehearsal, she would say to me, now, well, I found out the rough way. First, she didn't hold back, and the first time we were rehearsing was in a shed that I remember where we had to actually do some fighting. I think that was our first encounter in the shed where a ball of twine is my favorite weapon. So in that scene, she hauls off and I go flying across the room in the shed, and I'm like, Sean, it's rehearsal. And she says, Sean, she's got to learn that I don't hold back, and we go full force in rehearsal so we know what we're doing when the film is rolling, because film is expensive, and that's the way she would talk. Film is expensive, and when we were on the beach, the fight scene on the beach, oh, my God. She said to me before we started the night off, do not hold back because I'm out to kill, and if you want to survive, so you know you're going to have to fight back and not pull any punches because the camera doesn't miss a thing. And God love her, man. You know, we were both bruised and battered when we walked off that next morning as the sun was rising. So if you can imagine, the sun is setting, and Sean is writing down his notes, and I called it a choreography for a ballet because it really was.
Yeah, your poster of that's fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. You have that. I'm almost. Edition is the limited edition is almost out, and I'm going to bring what I have, I think, to the camp because it's so special. What else? You know, we're going to be right there. We can reenact it. And when I grabbed those notes out of the trash, it was the next morning after we'd been through this entire brutal fight, and literally we did walk off with, wounds. I mean, they were just, we were bruised because, the reason some of that stuff or all of that stuff looks so real is because it was when she's banging Alice's head into the sand. She is banging my head into the sand. And, as we're biting, we're just not biting deep, But it was, and then, like you said, I made a poster out of these notes that I pulled out, and there's 13 notes, which just is the biggest mind-blower of all. And, of course, Sean was thrilled when I made one poster for him and one poster for me and called it the Ballet de Machete. But then he I'm sure you've done this too, he said, do me a favor, do the fans a favor, make this poster available to them, and they can watch it through my eyes, the eyes of the director, and freeze frame it and frame the poster, take it off the wall, freeze frame it 1 through 13, and, look at it a little bit differently than they've seen it. So, that was very, very cool. And it all goes back to circling around to Betsy, who made it, who upped my game. She totally did. And I thank her for it because we did sit in the back row of the Chicago Music Box Theater in, I think it was '08 maybe, for a midnight screening. And we'd never watched the movie before that, or actually I don't think after that either, together. And we both sat in the back row, and she kept on, giving me little nudges and, not bad, huh? Still holds. And then she goes, still holds up. And it was such a big deal to hear her finally embracing it and ultimately embracing Mrs. Voorhees as the character that she will be known for, as even though the critics truly gave her hell for it because she
critics know nothing.
Yeah, they don't.
You guys are going down in history. It's an iconic thing.
It is, and she truly realized that her friends, her fans were her friends, and that they loved her deeply, and that's all any actor, that's all any person wants in the world, isn't it? You just want to be good at what you've chosen for your career or your path in life, and you want to be loved, and so I do remember that something else that's so special about Betsy, since we're all such great fans of hers, when I started Crystal Lake Wines and I brought her some to her apartment, she would always invite me to her apartment off of Central Park West, which was this gorgeous brownstone, that you can't ever get anymore. The beautiful brownstone, and she didn't eat meat, and she did order in vegetarian meals, and she loved the Cabernet Sauvignon. She loved red wines. She also loved Maker's Mark, and she turned me on. She was a tough broad, but she was the sweetest lady in the world, and to see her get from that tough, hardened exterior that she used to put on, and just kind of melt into a sweet, like you said, grandmother, and sit there on the couch, and we'd be drinking wine, and I brought her the Crystal Lake Memories book, and for some reason she never got one, because both of us didn't get one because we couldn't attend the opening party. So I had mine with her, and it was around Mother's Day, and so I thought, how apropos, I'll get her to sign mine, and she's looking at it lovingly and said, I never did get one of those. And I went, oh, my God, Betsy, you can have mine. And she goes, no. And she goes, but I am going to my daughter's, and it is Mother's Day weekend, and it would be lovely to have it. And so I did give it to her. And as we're looking through it and we're flipping through, we actually shared tears. And I have on my web, there's no way I can really retell the entire story, but we shared such beautiful things together as she's looking through a book, saying, I guess, it was worth it. It was, my career went down the tubes, but I guess it was worth it. And I said, Betsy, you always being loved by your fans. And she said, I guess I can embrace that. And she said, and you promised me, because it was after, what was it, when they were trying to do the remake and it turned into something else in '09 or what it was. She said if they ever get this right, so it had to be after '09, another time when we had it, she said, you promise if they offer you Mrs. Voorhees that you'll accept. And I went, Betsy, they're never going to figure that one out.
So we've had a famous debate on this podcast about remakes and reboots and sequels.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts as far, like, you were the original Final Girl, you kind of started it all, so you spawned the entire sequel franchise of slashers. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm glad I could help. Quite honest.
Are they worthy, or should they just be left alone and have the original outshine?
Well, first of all, I think the first one stands on its own, simply because it's more than just a slasher. There's also a mystery. Number two is a little bit of a mystery, but not as much as number one, because you kind of you already think you know who the killer is, whereas in the first one you really have no idea, I don't think. No. And a lot of kids or whatever, future campers, don't see them in the correct order. So therefore, the sequels really don't have a whole heck of a lot to do with the first one. And in terms of the '09 reimagining, as far as my thoughts on that one is, if it brought new blood, so to speak, into the franchise, and if it brought new people into the franchise, excellent. But God knows they've had enough time to get it right, and they haven't. And so as far as that goes, I don't have to, but I do. I listen to the fans, and they're tortured by the fact that we haven't had what the original fans, because I think there's a couple of different schools on it. You have your original diehards, and then you have the new bloods, and then you have your Jason lovers who love Kane versus, head. And I think, every Jason, how can you compare Jasons? Every Jason is different. And I think that's the way the sequels are. I think they kind of, maybe the first four have a unity, kind of, sort of. But if you watch part 3 or part 4, part 4 does have flashbacks. But, I mean, it's very hard to see the others and understand the mythology behind it if you haven't seen part 1. So on that, in that respect, I think part 1 stands on its own. And as far as the sequel goes, it was a no-brainer. It was a total no-brainer. And Sean's the first one to tell you he thought it was a bad idea to make Jason the monster, but he totally agrees that was a good thing now because he's sitting pretty, and it spawned so much. It spawned a game that's going crazy because the fans are just so the fans love it. Plus, they're desperate for hopefully part 13, and now part 13 is. We're just wondering if it'll ever get made because of the legal situation, which I'm sure you guys are aware of.
Yeah, and we just saw Ready Player One last night with Spielberg, and Jason makes an appearance in that. So how cool is that?
Oh my gosh! No, I
Jason
didn't
makes
know.
a cameo.
Wow!
So he's in everything.
Yeah,
Who played Jason? Who knows, right?
It's like CGI.
Yeah, it was CGI, like an Avatar kind of world. But what's really cool about it is how much of a part of our society Jason is. Like,
I know, and my last convention, or I did a midnight screening in Columbus a couple of weeks ago, and somebody was asking me a question about that, and I said, and who had the machete first? Everybody forgets. Who was the one who wielded the first murder with the machete, and everybody forgets. It was Alice. It wasn't Jason, and I got a, standing ovation, or at least a round of applause. But, it's easy to forget where the movie started and that Jason just was, Alice's dream in the first one, and... or was he? There's so many schools of thought on that, too. It's amazing. But definitely this film and this film franchise has become part of our, just part of our cult history, our entertainment now. It's ingrained, I think, in terms of horror films, in terms of... on the top of the list that you have to see if you're a horror fan.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of cool. Like, even people who aren't fans of horror know about Friday the 13th, like the whole, franchise.
Well, they do, which is kind of interesting because after I speak to you, I'm actually going to the winery, Valley View Winery, tonight for a small event. And my Crystal Lake Wine Corner there it's interesting because I keep it kind of tame. I do keep it tame because we get people from all around the world. And you'd be amazed at how many people come in there and know the film. And I'm not just talking about fans, but I'm talking about other people who are just curious and what's going on now. And if I happen to be there, I have all my, my paintings, and I paint a lot of scenes from Friday the 13th because those turn into my wine labels. So it's kind of fun. And I'm always amazed at how many people really do know about the film who aren't horror fans. And when we had the screening one summer, it was a Friday the 13th in July or something like that. We were showing it on this big screen, and if you could imagine, I always say it was my finest hour or two, seeing all these diehard fans that have driven down from Portland, Oregon, up from San Francisco and Sacramento, and, all the locals who are huge fans, sitting next to wine club members who had never seen the movie before, not knowing what to expect, everyone drinking Survivor Syrah or Moonlit Chardonnay, or it was just amazing because who would have thought? Talk about what this movie and the franchise has spawned. Who would have thought Crystal Lake wines? It was never on my radar. It was just one of those things that came from the heavens, seriously. When we moved to Southern Oregon, we joined the wine club, and sure enough, the owners of the best winery in Southern Oregon were horror fans, and ... They asked me to join their family, and the rest is history. That doesn't happen to normal folk, you know?
No, and I was going to ask, like, how you came about to get into making this wine, because it's really cool to like tie it all in together with, you know, your paintings and your memories of making this movie, and wine seems to be something that you're obviously very interested in, and it's cool how it all comes together.
Quite passionate. I call it my three passions. You know, I have my acting and film is one passion that I've always had. My painting, I've always painted, and it's my three passions wrapped up with a big bow. And life honestly doesn't get quite better than that, I'll tell you. It's just an amazing, remarkable, humbling actually scenario, because who gets to live this? And that's why my message after all of this is that I tell everyone, usually in my audience, that we're all survivors, and Alice survived, and I survived, as most of you people know, a horrible stalking thing. And if I can be here at this beautiful place after having gone through such hell and back, I'm here to say it's possible for anyone who feels like they can't go on, that just hold on, and you too can get through it. And it's hard to believe when you feel like no one's listening to you and you feel like your world is out of control, which it was in 1980 after the film came out for over a year and a half or so. And needless to say, it changed my whole on-camera career to voiceovers, because I was just not emotionally equipped to go on camera after what I'd been through. And it's only after getting reunited with my fans in 2004 that I realized there was a lot more to this. Talk about full circles is, you know, you realize why you go through things. And for me, I kind of felt like at that point, maybe that's why I went through it, so I could be the touchstones, as Alice is a touchstone for so many people, that she made it. Well, maybe I can, and I get that feedback from people on social media all the time, so I know it's true. And just last time, like I was telling you about in Columbus, I had people come up to me after I told them that my story a little bit and shared that they could come out of anything. I touched people, and they told me how much they touched them, and you know, they felt strength from that. So that's, at this point in my life, that's what I try to give back, is that that's why I like to talk to you and talk to people in terms of just saying there's more out there, so that's hopefully just a little message that Alice and I send to your listeners.
No, and thank you so much for, you know, turning all that around and making something positive out of it. And, you know, it gives hope, like you said, to so many people that might be going through something. And
yeah, and most of us do at some point in our lives. I mean, it's very rare that someone goes through this life on this planet unscathed. You know, we all hit some shit along the way. Are you allowed to say shit on podcasts?
You can say anything you want.
Ooh, don't tempt me. But no, it makes sense. It does make sense now, because when I was going through it, obviously I couldn't figure it out why, and that's usually where we all get stuck. You know, why, and why go on? And there's a reason to go on, because there is a silver lining, and you just have to hang in there for it, because we all get the opportunity to find it at one point or another. You just have to be aware. You know, yeah. You have to keep the eyes open, because it may be coming from like I said with the wines. Who had that on my radar? But I didn't say no when they asked me to join their family. You know.
Right. One of the things I was thinking about Friday the 13th and everything is like how you really pushed like the female hero in the movie and being the sole survivor. And
Yeah.
I want to know, like, to me, you were like the blueprint for the heroine in such a situation like that, and being that sole survivor. And like, how do you feel about, like, to me, you're almost like a role model, you know?
And
How do you feel about that? Like, just
I accept it and I embrace it, and I hope to be worthy of it, because that's my mission now, is to really reach out to, especially, thank God, finally there's an awakening after all these years. When I tell you, trust me, everybody, so many women go through such hell, and we don't have to be victims. Women don't have to be victims. No one has to be a victim. And it shouldn't be ingrained that women are weaker. We are just as strong mentally, perhaps not physically, but, man, Alice was using some brain cells as opposed to, the brawn, until she wasn't a warrior, but when her back was pushed against the wall, she wanted to live, and she was going to fight, like, to her death to prevent it, as opposed to, just, I just, when I see the lady who plays Marcy, and forgive me, I can't think of her name right now. Oh gosh, what's her name?
Janine Taylor, right?
Janine Taylor.
Yes.
God bless you. Thank you. The way she stands there waiting for the axe to hit her. It's like she, instead of fighting, she's like receiving. And when I saw, it's funny, I hadn't seen it for a few years, 5 years or so, when I saw it recently, and you notice things you haven't noticed before, and I went, oh my God, girl, you've got at least five seconds here to kick them in the crotch, Go. It's like, do not accept being told you have to do anything that you don't want to do. And again, I was fortunate enough to be honored at the Idaho Horror Film Festival in October the 13th, was a Friday the 13th, and they played the movie. And we had a huge Q&A, and I was given the Trailblazer Award, the first Trailblazer Award for my character and for what I represent. And that has given me so much ammunition to go beyond and speak more. And I'm seriously, it's so difficult, but I am writing a book. And if I tell you how hard it is to write this book, but I feel, because it's opening things that I have buried, because that's what you do to survive. You put things in a box and you put them away and you hide them deep, and you lock them up and you bury them in a vault. And so I'd have to be unlocking it. I'm slowly unlocking those things just because I think it can help other women or other people. It doesn't have to be women. It's anyone who's being bullied. And my heart goes out to anyone who's suffering in any way that is caused by another human. It's just remarkable and unconscionable to me that we still live in an age, after all we've all been through, that we don't treat each other with more humanity. And so, yeah, I have a message now, and it's going to be hard to tell my story, but I'm going to get it out there, because I tell little bits and pieces as I go along to different shows, and I see the immense reception and how much it truly it touches people. And I can do something, and I know this is really corny for a horror show, but honestly, Emily Dickinson was my favorite poet, and one of the lines in one of her poems is, if I can stop one heart from breaking or ease one pain, I have not lived in vain. And that's kind of how I feel, and kind of what I want to do with the rest of my world that's left.
That's a fantastic message, and you're reaching out to such a big fan base out there that we know your message is getting out there to a lot of people, and it's going to be shared too. And we appreciate you taking
Thank you.
time
And
to just let us know how you feel about all that. It's I know it's hard, I mean, I'm not in your shoes, but like it's got to be hard, and we appreciate that, opening up like that.
Yeah, it is hard, but it makes sense that if it was hard, maybe somebody else doesn't have to go through that. So maybe by my sharing some of those ugly details, somebody else can be spared. And then it all makes sense. Then the full circle makes sense. And then me going back to camp makes sense. And it's going to be a bloody blast. It really will.
It sounds like it will be.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe they'll. I know there's a lot of fans out there that weren't chosen and they're upset and all that. But, once I get in there and I start talking to the Boy Scouts, maybe we can get a couple more dates opening. It doesn't have to be a Friday the 13th necessarily. If a couple of weeks ago with St. Patrick's Day, and we showed Friday the 13th and we packed the theater. So,
Just take plenty of pictures for us that can't be there. That's all.
Yeah, well, we will totally. I want to, and I told Stacy, and she's all about this. I did want to bring someone in to do some sort of documentary, but I don't know why, but Boy Scouts they don't want to let anybody on to film or whatever. But what we can do, she said, is we can do some live Facebook stuff,
That's cool.
And so we will make sure I will do that. And, I'll put it on my Facebook pages or my Instagram or whatever. I'll have Curtis there so Curtis will know what to do. Curtis and Dallas. Curtis, to all you people who don't know, is my webmaster and my dear friend and keeps everything going for me. Without Curtis, I would not have a website. I wouldn't have my Facebook pages. So God bless you, Curtis.
Is there anything else you wanted to advertise or promote before we let you go? I know we're taking up your time here. We're so...
Oh, no, you're not taking up my time, but...
we could talk all day, but we know you're getting to the winery. And...
But I haven't had a glass of wine yet, so... So in that case, I'll probably be showing off soon. But no, in terms of advertising, I don't know. I don't really need to advertise. I have such an incredible fan base and happy campers globally, 3 generations and counting, that I'm so blessed because my paintings and my giclées of my paintings, which are, for any of the people out there who don't know, giclées are very beautiful high-end prints, and it's a French word which means to spray paint. And my paintings are in collections around the world. Again, it's just something so extraordinary that it humbles me, and I thank everyone. So I have collectors. More than horror. I appreciate my horror fans collecting my works, and I also have my works in collectors' collections that aren't horror related. There's an image of Alice in a canoe that was actually in the Smithsonian, and I shared it on my Facebook page a few months ago or a few weeks ago, and it went for something like $12.8 million. I'm not kidding you. Who would?
That is an accomplishment.
Isn't that amazing? And
just to be in the Smithsonian, that's unreal.
Yeah, that's great.
It was a touring of the artist's work, and his name is Peter Doag, I think, and his art is gorgeous. But I'm just saying, if his art, if Friday the 13th is good enough for huge collectors out there, I'm glad that my happy campers embrace it as well. Not to compare my art with his, but every artist has their own style and has their own thing, and his is funny enough. My paintings get way more likes than his did, which was pretty funny, actually. It just goes to show you what a great bunch of campers I have.
So we can't thank you enough. Means a lot to us.
My
great
pleasure.
to talk to you. We're lifetime long fans, so
thanks again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. You take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Okay, bye.
So welcome back. Hope everyone enjoyed the interview with Adrienne. I think it was pretty insightful. A lot of touching moments in there.
Yeah, fantastic interview with Adrienne, and we're so grateful to have the opportunity to talk to her.
I just gotta say, as an ultra fanboy of this movie, watching it back on Betamax when I was like 6, people are like, "What the fuck is Betamax?"
And 6 explains a lot about you, man. Explains a lot.
They don't even know what VHS is anymore, let alone Betamax. But I mean, I would never think I would have this opportunity. Like, if somebody said while I was watching that movie as a kid, being in love with it, you'll get to talk to the star of the movie. I'd be like, there's no way.
Yeah, and what a great film! It's a classic horror flick, and one that so many people have grown up with.
It's a surreal experience. So,
Yeah.
I mean, listening to it, we were both kind of enamored just listening to her stories. I could have literally sat there all day and just listened. So, we didn't want to interject too much. We just, hey, you people hear enough of us talk. We can talk whenever we want. It's not too often we're going to have Adrienne King on. So, let her, shine. She took the spotlight, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was just like listen to the stories, the insight that she had. It was truly like your friend is sitting next to you, talking to you, and she's such a great person and so easy to talk to, and has so much to share and such great messages and positive messages to share with everything that she's gone through. And I think that's you know very important that she talked about in our conversation with her.
Yeah, and I got to give a special shout out to Curtis. Thank you very much for helping make this happen. You put pretty much the whole thing together. So appreciate it, man. Love you. Thanks again.
Thank you, Curtis. Appreciate it. As always, we can be reached by email at dysfunctionalnerdcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Twitter at DNerdcast. Throw up some polls and tidbits and little teases up on there. And, of course, on Facebook. And that's at Dysfunctional Nerdcast.
And also, don't forget to check out adrienneking.com. Order any of that Crystal Lake wine. And again, she's going to be at Chiller Theater April 27th through 29th. So go meet her. She's awesome in person. Until next time.